I had become that woman because the first sexual predator arrived when I was 11, the second when I was 18, I was raped when I was 23 and assaulted at 24, and through each incident, I reported my truth only to have my truth, my story, my voice, and my value denied and dismissed by the people around me. I'm the oldest child of an arranged marriage, and my mother and father, they met only to get married. My parents were married in 1982 and I was born in 1983. And I grew up experiencing and witnessing a very specific kind of love. My father is brilliant, he's a scholar, and I was taught that brilliant men, but perhaps men of any kind, they require and deserve emotional allowances. My father worked tirelessly to give my siblings and I a prestigious, very expensive private school education, and the domain of raising the kids, cooking, bathing, feeding, and taking care of the social harmony in the home, that was my mother's domain. And we were supposed to orbit around him and his well-being and his needs and his thoughts and his opinions. I was shown through my mother that the way to be an ideal woman, daughter, or partner was to continually bend to the desires of the man in your life. To bend, rationalize, forgive, be compassionate, sometimes even to the point of self-sacrifice and self-harm. And so I grew up with a mother who was silent with sorrow. We grew up parallel, we suffered in parallel, and we starved ourselves emotionally and physically in parallel. She shrank, and so I learned to do the same. And so years later, I unwittingly recreated an uncanny replica of my parents' marriage. Because I was carrying so many unhealed wounds, I began to attract precisely the kind of partner that would be attracted to that kind of person, a person who was just made of empty space. And soon enough, I found myself in an abusive marriage. I met the man who became my husband when I was 25, and within months, we knew we were going to get married, and we got married. I was basically a black hole of a person. So to be devoured by him, he wanted every single part of me, and his larger-than-life personality demanded all of me, and that actually felt really comforting because I didn't know who I was. All I had ever wanted was to be valued and wanted by the people in my life. Initially, his ravenous desire for all of me felt like I belonged to someone. But lo and behold, his devouring lust became his lust for control and dominance. He started policing my clothing. He would tell me what to wear and what not to wear. He started buying me big, bulky sweater dresses to cover me up. He would wipe makeup off my face. He started grilling me about all of my schedule choices and financial and career choices. And everything hinged on his desire for dominance and to feel superior. What was really interesting is that for the longest time, it didn't bother me. It didn't unsettle me because it felt like home. It felt a lot like the love I had seen between my parents. And then in the story of my husband and I, there was a plot twist. I began writing. Unbeknownst to my husband, I started waking up every morning with these chapters of this mysterious book. And I would get up and I would type these chapters. And as this book grew, it started to explain to me how I had become that woman. So on Valentine's Day, 2011, I decided to say a word that I had never uttered to him before. no. And he frowned and he said, what? And I repeated it. I said, no. And I could feel myself growing stronger. I could feel my voice growing stronger. And I said, no, you're not allowed to control my narrative. Only I author my life, and I was born for a story and a purpose so much bigger than you. And that first no is always the hardest. But the voice is a muscle, and the more we use it, the stronger it grows. And that first time that I said no to my ex-husband, he laughed and then he grew angry. It was like he couldn't handle my voice, because by speaking, I had become a fire he could not control. So I left and I continued to write. I realized that because those mysterious chapters of that book had given me so much clarity and courage, I felt like I had a responsibility to publish those chapters as a memoir so that the memoir could be of service to someone else in their path to healing and freedom. And I wrote this memoir called I Am Yours. And it's titled that because it's a love letter written to anyone who has gone through trauma of any kind.
I actually heard Reema's voice before I read a word that she'd ever written. She did a podcast, Dear Sugars, and I was listening to her speak about emotional abuse. And as I listened, I kept thinking, this is my story. This is my story. These are my details. I have never read a book that has felt more honest, more powerful.
I wrote I Am Yours to provide the words of healing and love I wish others had known to give me when I was a young woman in an abusive marriage, when I was assaulted in my 20s.
Especially women, especially like Desi women. How do we hold people accountable for their actions without just removing ourselves?
I was told that boys will be boys. I was shown that in this world, the promise of justice often fails to inform the reality of justice, especially if you're brown, especially if you're a woman, especially if you come from a Muslim country like Bangladesh. I wrote this book for the same reason that I speak in the world, unapologetically. Every time I speak, another silenced voice hears that their story matters, that their voice and your voice and my voice, we are all important. We all have a place and belonging in this world.